All right. Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome back to the Rancher Podcast. We've got a great episode here today. You are seeing the true behind the scenes, the real life, if you will, of the Halverson brothers. One of us is sitting in their brand new empty room of their house. I just finished moving, and the other one is sitting in a nice cinder block dorm, not a jail cell, a dorm, right, Ken?
Yeah, but these four white walls, they talk to me some days. So
Yeah, well, thank you all for tuning in. We got a great episode. Callan was on when we first talked about the PBR teams, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but mainly wanted to hit on the high notes of I went to the Austin Gamblers, which is, of course, the Austin, Texas PBR team. I went to their launch party, which is in downtown Austin last week. Was kind of a cool event. Was glad I was able to go. And so just wanted to break that down and talk about the upcoming draft. The draft will actually be at Texas Live, which is the new kind of event venue, if you will, that's near the Cowboys Stadium. And it's not Globe Life, is it? What's the new name for the Rangers field, count?
yeah, it's global, I feel.
Still Globe Life?
Like I
Okay.
think of Arlington or something like that.
Yeah. So they've kind of built a downtown area there. And apparently that's where the draft is going to be. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about that. It's going to be at the end of May. Thought it would have been cool to go get our corresponding reporter Callan there as well, but it's a Monday night and we've got commitments. I think Callan's baseball team would not be too happy with him if he wasn't available on a Monday night. So we'll probably try and do a live stream if we can, right, Callan?
Let's do it. I'm all in on that.
Yeah. So let's see. What is it? The 23rd or the 24th of May? They said it's 20 days away. So somewhere around there. Really looking forward to that. Talk a little
23rd.
bit, Callan. It's a snake draft, right? So what does that mean? I mean, the Gamblers, they talked about, they've got the first overall pick. They're really excited about that. One of the guys who was actually at the event was Jose Vitor Leme, which, of course, is one of the best bull riders in the world. And there was a lot of talk saying essentially, like, if you guys don't choose this guys, you're insane. So, we'll talk a little bit more about speculation closer to the draft, but just process wise. So, snake draft, explain that.
So the snake draft is, I mean, they got 8 teams, obviously. Austin Gamblers going first and the Oklahoma Freedom going eighth. So that means it'll flip, where in the second round, the Oklahoma Freedom will go first and the Austin Gamblers will go last in the second round. Then they'll keep going back and forth until the end of the fifth round. So Oklahoma City kind of gets screwed on that a little bit, but that's part of the draft order.
Yeah, they do, but it's interesting because the Freedom and the Gamblers are really the two that kind of lose out the most. Obviously, the Freedom being first, but then the Gamblers are going to have to go last. So they're going to get, basically 16 picks between their first one and their second one. So they're going to lose out on a lot of guys. But, the teams are small, right? We have teams of essentially 5 starters. So, Gamblers are lucky in the fact that they're going to get that first ever pick. But of course, we talked about injuries being a huge part of this. I mean, if Jose's out or whatnot, I mean, your second best guy is going to be the 17th best guy in the field. I mean, that's kind of tough, right?
You think, but I mean, you never know how these drafts go.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But I'm interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about the event. So, it's interesting. I follow all the teams on Instagram, and I've seen some of the other ones, some of the events they've put on. The Ridge Riders, they had theirs at this new event facility where their competitions are going to be. And that was really cool, obviously, because they were at the place that they were going to compete. The Nashville Stampede kind of had a cool rooftop party. I haven't seen anything out of the Freedom or some of the other teams. I know like these are slowly rolling out over the next month before the draft. So we'll probably see more, but I saw that they were, launching the team here in Austin and inviting the public down to Republic Square, which is right in the heart of downtown. So I was like, well, shoot, this is a perfect time to kind of get involved and see what's going on. So Went downtown, of course. First hurdle ever, or first hurdle whenever you're going downtown Austin is trying to find parking. It was kind of interesting. I always laugh. I used to work for the state, so I could park at the Capitol all the time, but can't do that anymore. And so I pull up to this place, and it's a parking garage. And the guy's like, "Do you want to park here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of why I showed up." I was like, "Okay, well, it's like $15." And I was like, "I don't think I really have a choice." And he's like, "Well, it's good all day." And I was like, "Okay, just like like thanks, man." So
I
I
needed all day.
parked and got past that hurdle. Found parking fairly close by, so went over to Republic Square. And throughout the podcast here, Cal and I will be talking about. I'm going to kind of throw up images and stuff so that you guys can see this. What was going on, but kind of cool atmosphere. They had their house band, the Ghosts of Kenny Rogers, perform at the end. But as it was kind of starting up, it was a 2 hour long event. They just had a DJ playing, and they actually had a guy doing live art. Have you ever seen like the spray paint art count?
Hmm.
Yeah, so they had a guy who was like actually live doing that, and then they also had a mechanical bull, which I didn't see anybody get on. It's like the middle of the workday. A lot of people there were in like nice work clothes. I thought that would have been pretty wild if some dude just like looked down from his office and he's like, you know what? I know I'm wearing a suit and tie, but it's time to ride.
It's like, yeah, I need to get out of this office.
Yeah, but didn't see any of that. They did have a bull there, and they had a woman and a horse. And so it was a cool atmosphere there. I definitely saw people that like just were walking around downtown and were like, "What the heck?" and came over. So like introducing people to the sport. It's one of those things like a lot of these teams are going to have to introduce themselves to their cities, right? There's people like me that love the sport and whatnot. But if you're going to start representing a town, you've got to get out in front of the people. And it wasn't huge, but like when the Thunder came, I mean, remember what all they were doing, Callan? I mean, it seemed like there was like a prep team coming out, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they got posters and billboards up all around the city, all that stuff. Not sure they're good to that extent, but they got to promote a little bit.
You remember? I remember one time we were sitting at Brahms with Dad before school, and they had like the competition to name the team, and like all the kids could like draw, like write in and like draw, their team jerseys and whatnot. And someone was like, oh, "Okay, that's cool," and then someone was like, "Oh, that would be terrible." That I don't
They
know if
probably
that
let
was
some.
gonna work.
They probably let some little kid draw the OKC Thunder logo. Honestly,
I remember when it finally came out, I was like, "This is a huge disappointment." But
yeah,
we've already talked about the logos here in the PBR teams draft. Austin definitely has one of the best ones. I mean, like, there's no denying. Seems like they spent a lot more on the creative design budget than anybody else, right?
yeah. We could talk about the new name change.
Oh yeah, yeah. There is a name change, the Carolina Chaos. Which did they come in last or second to last to the Outlaws in
I
names?
think. I think they were last. I think we had to. I think they really tied our hands, but we loved it. We really did, but it's sad to see the chaos go.
Their logo at the time looked like something you bought like when you're on vacation, like Puerto Vallarta or something. Like you buy a shirt, it's like Puerto in like letters and then like Vallarta and like torn up stuff. It was
It looked
wild.
like an
So
energy drinker. It's like if I
yeah,
drink this, I may not make it through the day.
yeah. It's made with real panther bits. But they've changed their name to the Carolina Cowboys, which I mean, upgrade, downgrade on the name. I don't know. I mean, obviously everyone loves Cowboys, but kind of generic, if you will. Logo's a lot cooler though, right? I mean, like that
I
that
would
moved them up like 3 or 4 rankings.
definitely hit him up again or notched him up against the Kansas City Outlaws, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
pretty generic name. But I was like, anybody can get behind that. So
Yeah. So one of the cool things was actually right before I headed out to the event was the Gamblers actually announced that they have a new owner, someone who had bought a stake in the ownership, Michael Dell. Do you know that name?
that doesn't ring a bell.
Really? I think you might be working on a device of his, a Dell computer.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, he's kind of a big name in the Austin area.
I would
So,
say so.
have you ever seen The Godfather?
I have not actually.
Okay, so one of the first scenes is they're at the Vito Corleone's son's wedding, and like basically someone's asking for a gift, and since it's her wedding day, it's like he can't say no. He's got to do a job for somebody, and it kind of felt like that. It felt like the day that they were launching, they were asking the Godfather of Austin, Michael Dell, the guy who kind of built the city over the last 20, 30 years, of like, can we get your blessing? So pretty interesting. And so they announced him. So then I show up, and you know pretty festive atmosphere. They had somebody who was making keychains like on like in the place, like they had like a leather stamper, which I was like, this is peak Austin, like total hipster thing. Like, yeah, we make leather keychains, like with an old school leather stamper.
You gotta sprinkle the city traditions in there a little bit. The city's
Speaking
like,
of, speaking of, I went to Texas A&M, huge Aggie, and they had the Longhorns cheerleaders and the Longhorn mascot there. They didn't have Bevo, the actual Longhorn, there. They had a different bull. They didn't have steer, but they had like the guy in the costume. And yeah, I stiffed him on the handshake, the knuckle tap. I did. I mean, I was like,
I didn't see that coming from you. I didn't see that.
it's like I can't be seen in public, giving knuckles to Bevo. So didn't do that. And then they started playing the Texas fight song, "The Eyes of Texas Are Upon You," and I was just like, I just did that. And some lady's like, why aren't you happy? And I'm like, dude, most of the country hates your team, right? Like, so I'm gonna support the Gamblers. They're my team. Thankfully, I am wearing a green shirt in solidarity with them. The green and black I will wear all day long, but you will not find me in burnt orange. So that was a little bit of a wrinkle in the festivities, but I was able to get over it. So then the next thing they did was they had JJ Gotch, who's also another guy who's pretty prominent in the Austin area, really successful with teams like the Round Rock Express, which is a good minor league baseball team. He's managed them. He's the CEO of the Gamblers, and he kind of introduced a few people who were there. And they brought out Cooper Davis, they brought out Dalton Kazel, and of course Jose Vitor Leme, and then Sean Gleason, who's the head of the PBR. So those guys got up there and talked, and of course then Michael Gaffney, who's the coach of the Gamblers, was also talking, and it was a really cool event from that perspective because I read an article today that they were kind of comparing it to if you had Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth at the same event, because Michael Gaffney had like the highest score ever for a bull rider. He got like a 96 and a half on Little Yellow Jacket, which is a legendary bull. And that record wasn't broken until I believe last year by Jose, who actually got a 98 and a half on Whoopah, which is one of the best bulls in the game these days. So pretty cool to see those guys on the same stage. And of course, Michael's going to be the coach. And like I alluded to earlier, people were like, who are you going to pick? Who's going to be number one? And it's like, Gleason, who's the head of the PBR, was like, look, if you don't pick Jose, I mean, you're an idiot. Like they literally said, Austin, like city of Austin, if Michael Gaffney does not pick Jose, you guys have some serious leadership problems. And I was like, wow.
Start over, burn the team down.
Yeah, I was like, dang, like that's kind of a tough place to put you in. I mean, imagine if they're trying to moneyball this thing, and Gaffney's like, oh yeah, well actually we're going for a different guy. It's like he's already on the chopping block from the start. So kind of, I mean, talk about, we just had the NFL draft. When you have someone who's as dominant as Jose, he's actually not number one right now. He's number four because he hasn't gone to too many competitions this year. But I mean, Does it seem like, especially over the last 20 years, that it's very predictable who's going to go number one in a draft, especially in the big, major league sports like the NFL and MLB and NBA? Is that like, you feel like that's almost always predictable?
Yeah, you would say that it's pretty predictable, especially when a quarterback has a career like all-time seasons and all that stuff, and a basketball player has been number one since he's been in eighth grade. You kind of get those senses, but this year in the draft, it was kind of a shock and all this stuff. But I mean, if Jose doesn't go first, there's a guy that didn't go number one in the draft this year in the NFL. And the second team, they turned in the card immediately. So I imagine the Nashville Stampede would love to get him in if that happens. So
Yeah, that'd be a major upset. Like it's tough though because you think about like Jose, fantastic guy. But just because he's the best in the world, I mean, there's five guys right behind him that are just equally
yeah.
as like competing at that competitive level, and injuries are such a big part of this. I mean, Dalen Swearingen, like almost a guaranteed number two pick right there. I mean,
Mhm.
in the first round, it's almost like you could easily predict exactly how it's going to go. And probably none of those guys are going to be a Greg Oden.
Yeah, that's another thing you have to think about is these guys want longevity. I mean, these are teams, so they want guys that are kind of young, but kind of, especially you don't want to waste a first round pick on a guy you're not very high on. You kind of want a guy that's been in the game and kind of a top dog. So that's gonna be interesting to see how they go.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that Jose and Dalton Casel, who were there, Cooper Davis, they always call him Captain America, one of the best bull riders there's been in the last 10 years. He was, pretty prominent. I don't know if he's even going to be in the draft, to be honest. But Jose and Dalton Casel, both of them were talking about how neither of them grew up actually riding bulls. Casel was a three sport athlete, and Jose back in Brazil was a soccer prodigy until he was 17. And he kind of has, like, if you look up his Instagram, he feels kind of like a Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Like he's always perfectly groomed. He's always got, like, the newest fashion. I mean, he's flying around on private planes. Like, these guys are world class athletes. And like you said, when you get to this level of competition, there's a lot more that you've got to factor in than just the typical questions about uh, who's the best right now, right? It's like
Mhm.
who is going to be somebody that we can build a team around, who's going to stay healthy, consistent, all those things. There's just a lot of questions. So it'll be interesting. The other part of the program was they talked a little bit about the competition style and coming to the Moody Center, which is brand new here in Austin. And the Moody Center, they'll be the first ever sporting event in the Moody Center. So that was really cool. Uh, Austin doesn't have a major sports team outside of our soccer team. So the Gamblers are the second team in the door, if you will, and we've got a very large growing. I think I saw that article, called us a boom town. So it'll be interesting, pulling people in from the suburbs, but also the surrounding area. San Antonio doesn't have a team. Houston doesn't have a team. Be really fascinating to see how this goes with the team atmosphere. They are going to be launching in Cheyenne. Uh, you know, just really interesting. And I found it funny going back to talking about the soccer team. One of the first things that they had show up was a drum or a drum line, which of course is like high school football and soccer. I mean, soccer, like those people, they got to lead the chants, like all that kind of stuff. So it was cool to see that energy. They had a guy carrying a flag out. So I think they're trying to build off of the success of the Austin FC, Major League Soccer team, and translate that into the Gamblers. We have the same colors, of course, all that. So just like speculating on that, how are these teams, especially with only one home competition? I mean, how do you think that they should go forward with trying to build a brand in the city, because I know like I haven't worn my Austin Gamblers t-shirt out yet, but I do have one now. And I promise like I'm gonna get questions or stuff, right? Because like cool
Mhm.
logo, it's Austin affiliated. Like what else do these teams need to be doing?
I would say, I mean, the other day, I mean, we are talking about how they were talking about, oh, the logo and stuff and all this stuff. It's like maybe you could ask the people. It's like, hey, maybe you can do like submit your own logo. We'd show at the jumbotron, the games and stuff, or the events, and get the people involved. Obviously, keep posting on social media and have just kinda like how minor league teams do it. Just have like big nights where like sponsorships and stuff, like promotional nights. I think that's the biggest way to keep people involved and want to come out. So
Yeah, I've also been thinking about it. Obviously, with only one competition in town, they're going to want to find ways to rally the fans back in Austin. So, maybe renting out a big venue to have a watch party or things like that. I mean, these teams, obviously, I think one of the cool parts about this, right, is that just because there's only a select number of team competitions, I believe there's what, 10. Um,
yeah,
these
it's
guys are
10.
also yeah these guys are also competing uh all the time in their individual. So you can be like, oh man, we got to turn on the rodeo tonight. Our team drafted Dalen Swearingen, we got to watch him. Let's see how he's
Mhm.
doing right now. They've got a competition next week. I mean, is he top of his game or not? So I think it'll be really cool for pulling people who usually wouldn't be into bull riding on a weekly basis. They talked about when the PBR started, uh, they had you know, uh, there were doubts about whether or not it was going to survive. And the first night, they like quadrupled or like 100 times over, got like this giant audience to tune in on this Sunday night after football, and it was like this huge deal of people want to see this, and so
Mhm.
I'm curious, if that translates over to the teams aspect, with these 8 markets that we have.
I agree. And I think that you do a lot of stuff with this. I mean, you would love to see they be promoted in these cities. And I think that it's obviously going to be a hit. I mean, bull riding, everyone loves bull riding. And when those events come to these cities, I mean, people come, they want to watch and they want it to be in their hometown. And now they have their own team, they're going to come out and watch. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the cool thing about Austin, obviously, there were some for the gamblers. There's going to be some Austin area kind of quirks, and like I said, they do have a house band, which is the Ghosts of Kenny Rogers. Which I was like, man, that's kind of a tough name. The dude just passed away like a year ago, so it's like, wow. But his famous song, "The Gambler," kind of makes sense. But they roll up on stage and they don't start with "The Gambler" by Kenny Rogers. I was like, dude, that's why we're all here. Like, come on. So I think we've got a few kinks to work out. They actually have the drummer from Reckless Kelly, which is a band a lot of people down here in Texas love. And so that'll be cool to see them get incorporated into, like I said, if they're going to do watch party events or whatnot, have them perform. And then, of course, at the Moody Center, them performing. Really excited about that. But, I think overall, it was not a giant event. Obviously, it's the middle of the day on a Thursday in downtown Austin, but I think it showed to me that there is interest. There were probably 200-300 people, and like I said, people were stopping by, checking it out. Everyone in Austin's always about to keep Austin weird, right? And so it's like,
Mhm.
what's weirder than like a live bull downtown launching like a pro, bull riding team. So I think it's got great legs in Austin. I think it's going to be, something that the community rallies behind. And, if Oklahoma Freedom have a similar launch, I think, we'll try and see what they're doing and whatnot. Obviously, if you're able to, you could go and check that out. But besides that, I mean, you have any parting words for our guests? Anything that you think they should be watching out for as the draft comes near? And of course, our first competition we'll be in Cheyenne later this summer, so we've got a little bit of time to kind of speculate once our teams are set. I heard there's going to be a second draft. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Yeah,
What did you read
so
on that?
essentially it's going to be a 5 round draft, this first one, right?
Hmm.
In May. And then they're going to let you pick up 2 more guys in the middle of June who aren't available for the full season for whatever reason. So anything you think they should be looking out for before then?
I think they should read into these rankings and stuff and kind of follow some guys that they would want to see on their team and be able to follow along when we talk about who we think is going to go in the first round and stuff. I think that's a big thing, and obviously get ready for the season. I think it's going to be exciting, and that draft's going to be cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today, Callan. We, always appreciate your input, the Sultan of SWAT, if you will. Uh, we appreciate all your input on team sports, and looking forward to doing that live draft breakdown here at the end of the month. So until then, hit it hard, and thanks everyone. Godspeed and God bless.